Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea reports its highest number of COVID-19 cases so far in the pandemic. The daily average has crossed the threshold for the authorities to raise distancing to the next level, but there are major concerns about the economic damage that would cause. The United States, having started rolling out the vaccine made by Pfizer, appears likely now to approve the one from Moderna as well, saying the Moderna vaccine presents no safety concerns. And the number of people employed in South Korea declined in November because of the pandemic for a 9th month in a row. This is the longest period of decline in more than 20 years. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea on Wednesday saw more than 1,000 new cases of COVID-19. The government is looking at going to the highest level of social distancing, but it's reluctant to deal another massive blow to the economy and people's livelihoods. PNG reports.
South Korea reported 1,078 new COVID-19 cases on Wednesday, the highest number since the outbreak began. It's the second time the country has surpassed the 1,000 mark in just 3 days.
There has been an average of 833 daily cases over the past 7 days since December 10th, reaching the threshold for level 3 social distancing measures, which is an average of 800 to over 1,000 daily cases.
The government is still cautious about imposing the level 3 social distancing right away, as it will bring massive social and economic impact, especially to small business owners. Of the 1,054 locally transmitted cases on Wednesday, more than 70% came from the Greater Seoul area. 373 were from Seoul and 384 from the surrounding areas of Gyeonggi-do Province and Incheon. The government added that in the current situation, it is difficult to contain the virus by simply wearing masks.
The most important thing is to not be in contact with other people and to not be in places where it is difficult to wear masks.
The country saw 12 additional deaths on Wednesday, the second day in a row that deaths have been in the double digits. This raised the death toll in the nation to 612. 배은지, Arirang News.
The U.S. this week is rolling out the vaccine made by Pfizer. And now the FDA is indicating that it's nearly ready to approve another vaccine, the one made by Moderna. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The U.S. FDA on Tuesday issued a positive statement on Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine ahead of a meeting of experts on whether to give it the green light. Confirming the overall efficacy of 94.1%, the regulators said there were no specific safety concerns that would preclude issuance of an emergency use authorization. Now, a panel of outside experts will hold a meeting and offer their recommendation on the vaccine on Thursday, with a final FDA decision expected shortly after. If the FDA does approve the vaccine, the first shipments could start rolling out next week. Moderna's vaccine would be the second after Pfizer won authorization last week and began rolling out their vaccination program on Monday. On the other side of the Atlantic, the European Medicines Agency is set to hold a meeting among its Human Medicines Committee to consider a conditional marketing authorization application for the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. The meeting was originally scheduled for December 29th, but it has been brought forward to the 21st. A favorable opinion on the vaccine on Monday would mean the vaccine could be authorized in Europe a few days later. The EU has an agreement with Pfizer for up to 300 million doses, with deliveries to start by the end of this year. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The number of people employed in South Korea declined in November because of the pandemic for a 9th month in a row. This is the longest period of decline in more than 20 years. Kim Jae-hee reports.
South Korea has endured 9 straight months of declining on-year job figures. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, roughly 27 million people were employed in November, down 273,000 on-year. Although the situation was better than the previous month, when the number of jobs tumbled by 421,000, 9 consecutive months marks the longest period of on-year decline since April 1999. And Statistics Korea warns the recent spike in COVID-19 cases is expected to drag down December's numbers as well.
November saw a slight improvement in the number of job losses as softened social distancing measures in October boosted certain industries. However, it's hard to expect an improvement in December due to enhanced social distancing measures to level 2.5 in the capital area and level 2 for other regions.
Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi on Thursday also voiced concerns of job losses in December and January. In November, the unemployment rate hit 3.4%, up 0.3 percentage points on year. All age brackets apart from those over 60 saw an on-year decrease in the number of people employed and the employment rate. The employment rate for those aged between 15 and 64 was down 1.1 percentage points on year to 66.3%, while for those aged 65 and over, it was up 1 percentage point to 36%. The wholesale and retail sectors saw 166,000 job losses last month compared to a year earlier. Restaurants and lodging had 161,000 fewer jobs on year, and the manufacturing sector lost 113,000 jobs. One expert predicted the job market recovery may take longer than expected.
The economy has to recover first in order for employment to improve. But COVID-19, which is currently the main factor dragging down the economy, seems unlikely to go away anytime soon, especially with the recent third wave. The job market may remain subdued for longer than expected.
The expert says the government's priority should be to tame the spread of COVID-19 to help the economy recover and overcome the worst employment crisis in years. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, good to have you back on.
Happy to be here.
Well, stocks on Wall Street rose quite a bit overnight. Investors apparently encouraged by the stimulus talks and the vaccine rollout. This seems to have helped Korean stocks rise today, too. What's the story in the markets?
Okay, well, as you mentioned, the U.S. markets had a very good day. Dow went up by 1.1%, S&P by 1.3%, and NASDAQ also by 1.3%. In addition to the stimulus that you mentioned, they are getting closer to stimulus. Apparently, they decided that perhaps they should separate out the controversial elements and non-controversial elements so that the non-controversial elements will have a higher chance of passing. Now, this has not gotten approval from the congressional leadership, but people are becoming very optimistic. But also, the U.S. had other good news. In addition to the rollout of the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, the second vaccine made by Moderna was also approved. So now the United States will have choice of 2 vaccines that they can use. And then the electoral votes for the president took place, and it took place without problems. They were expecting some demonstrations and such by pro-Trump parties, but that did not take place. And for the first time, the Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell accepted Biden as president-elect. So now the transition may become a lot smoother than it has been so far. So all those optimistic elements are, I think, feeding into the stock market. Now on Europe, they had a bit of a mixed day. FTSE fell by 0.28%. DAX rose by 1.1%. CAC rose by 0.05%. They have some good news about Brexit as well. At least there are some rumors on the British side saying that the European Union may give some leeway for the trade agreement. The idea right now seems to be that of the 3 controversial issues, they'll kick the fishing agreement down the road. But the 2 remaining problems, how to settle disputes and cases where one side failed to carry out obligations, and the third problem where how much British goods will have to obey European Union standards if British goods are to be exported to the European Union. That is an existential problem for the European Union, given that they only have about 2 weeks to work this out. I'm not sure if the trade agreement will be workable within that period of time, but at least there are rumors going around Great Britain that it is getting closer to having a trade agreement. Asian markets had a mixed day. Nikkei went up by 0.26% today. Shanghai went down very slightly. Hang Seng rose by 0.90%. Now, this performance in Nikkei is despite bad export reports, where exports fell by 4% compared to last year. But still, the manufacturing sentiment seems to be improving in Japan. So the optimism won over pessimism today. Kospi, they're having a great day today after 2 days of falling index. It rose by 0.54%, and it hit another record, 2,771.79. And Kosdaq has been rising fairly steadily since last Wednesday. It rose today by 0.90%.
Well, Professor, the won-dollar exchange rate has been falling for weeks now. Korea's export prices we now see declined in November for a fourth month in a row. They're at the lowest they've been in 36 years. Some are saying the trend could continue. What's your take, Professor?
Okay, well, the reason for the strong won, I think, has three basic factors. Whenever the global economy is stable, won gains strength, at least since the 2008 global financial crisis. So this may actually be good news. Strengthening won may signal that the international economy is returning to a stable position. And then whenever we have such stable economy, foreign investors come to Korea. Foreign investors that come in to the Kospi to a large extent since November, and because the Korean currency market is small and the stock market transactions take a lot of high proportion of that currency market. Whenever foreign investors invest in Korea, Korean won tends to strengthen, and then since for about last 10 years, Korean won has been highly correlated with Chinese yuan. Chinese yuan has been strengthening since July, so all those factors are leading to strengthening of the Korean won. And because the Korean won is strengthening, when the export price index that you measure in the Korean won is the lowest it's ever been. And people are concerned that the strong Korean won may affect export performance. My feeling is that it won't affect it too much. Korean exports have been sort of separating from the effect of the exchange rate in the last few years, partially because things like semiconductors and smartphones are not as affected by currency exchange rates than perhaps the export items that Korea used to export during 1980s and 1990s. What's more important is global demand, and as I mentioned, the global economy seems to be returning to stability, which means hopefully more demand for Korean products.
All right, Professor, well, we're almost out of time, but we just heard about the employment numbers in Korea falling for a ninth month in a row. Can you comment on that, please?
Okay, well, all age groups except over 60s, the employment rate fell. And then if you look at the industry level data, where there were rise in jobs, it was public administration and health and social services. And then where there were loss of jobs, it was retail and wholesale, dining and lodging. So it seems like the fear about coronavirus is coming back, which is leading to loss in jobs in the dining sector and the retail sector. And things are being propped up by government spending, public administration jobs, health and social services jobs for over 60-year-olds. So basically, government is keeping the labor market more or less stable, but for the most people, younger people, this is a very bad labor market.
Indeed. All right, we'll have to leave it there for today, Professor. Thanks so much for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.
A team of South Korean researchers have secured technology for producing a material used in making semiconductors, a material for which South Korea has until now depended greatly on imports from Japan. The Korea Institute of Industrial Technology said Wednesday that after 10 years of research, the team, led by Dr. Jun Hyun-ae, has succeeded in producing an epoxy molding compound. The compound functions as a sealer to protect chips from heat, humidity, and external shock. The development is expected to reduce South Korea's dependence on Japanese supplies. And because of the sharp rise in COVID-19 cases, Asiana Airlines has decided to cancel its scenic flights to nowhere for the rest of this month. The company was going to use the Airbus A380, a double-decker plane dubbed a hotel in the sky, to offer passengers a 400-minute flight all the way to Japanese airspace and then back home. It's been a way for airlines in the pandemic to secure some revenue. Two of Korea's low-cost carriers, Jin Air and Jeju Air, are expected to continue their scenic flights. And that does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.